I've been a high-stakes pro for about 18 years. I've been fortunate enough to become friends with a lot of world-class players. And it's interesting over this time to have learned about qualities that each of them possess. But there certainly are some commonalities amongst all the players that rise to the top.
Discipline,
emotional stability,
finds a fold,
natural talent for patterns.
He makes the call.
Some people are going to be living poker as a life to reach the top.
This is actually a really fascinating question. Been kind of having a back and forth with my team about this a lot recently. We basically thought about it as a video game. If you had to start from scratch and you needed to create a successful poker player and you had say 100 attribute points, where would you allocate these attributes? No one singular trait outweighs another. It's critical for you to have a baseline of all of them.
There's a lot of different things that go into it. I mean, one of the most important things is kind of discipline, bankroll management, and a lot of things have kind of gone into making a poker career work. And a lot of those things will be consistent. How you're going to prepare when you play, how focused you're going to be, because it's not just how well you know how to play poker, it's also how well you execute at the table. It's like accumulation of small decisions that are good.
If you're not capable of thinking theoretically, you're probably in trouble. If you're not emotionally stable, you're probably going to fail. How do you strike a balance with all of these traits such that you're not deficient in any one of them? And I think that that's probably where the majority of talent gets lost, is just going all in on one specific trait, generally the logic, reason, strategy, and then ignoring all of the intangibles that are so critical to making money in this game.
I have never known a world-class player who didn't love the game. I've known some really great players who have fallen out of love, who've gotten burnt out, but at some point they've had such a deep love for the actual playing or the studying or kind of all of it combined. I just think the type of work that it takes and the type of swings you have to go through financially and emotionally, you need that drive that a love of the game gives you to make it.
To reach the top of professional poker, you have to play millions and millions of hands over your career. If you don't love the game, it's going to be impossible to just force yourself through that. So have an awareness that you're going to have to really love this to be able to put in that level of determination. Having a healthy obsession with poker, I think, is key for someone to reach the very highest levels of the game. The truth is, this is a game of passion, so some people are going to be living poker as a life to reach the top. And if you're seeing this as a hobby, if it's something that you're just trying to grind out for money, it's unlikely you're going to be able to get through the plateaus and reach the highest stakes.
We all have had these periods of our lives, and maybe multiple periods, where we're just completely engrossed in the game of poker. I just became so obsessed with the game that I couldn't think about school entirely. It was my junior year that I actually dropped out. I was completely checked out. I was sleeping with my computer next to my bed and the volume on max while I was sitting waiting at certain tables because I didn't want to miss any action. I'd just hear the beep beep because it was my turn. I wake up, it's 4:30 a.m. and I just immediately start playing. Intelligence is a really interesting one. Every successful world-class player that I know is intelligent, and I've watched them learn the game, and I've even spoken to them about the game. It seems like they understand it, but I've seen so many of them not succeed. And so I view intelligence as prerequisite, but not a guarantee of success. You just kind of need some minimum level of very high intelligence.
Specifically, if you're in the live realm, I think quite frequently the emotional intelligence side is too often ignored. How social of a game live poker tends to be, it's really critical for anybody who wants to have a successful career to understand how to navigate that world. And that's often just going to require a lot of high-level emotional intelligence, being able to pick up on when somebody else is emotionally unstable, assimilate to different amounts of environments, specifically your highest EV ones, basically making yourself available in a way that isn't just the nuts and bolts of showing up, playing the game, doing well, and getting a pat on the back.
part of your job as a professional poker player is studying the game. Some players are not interested in study. They're quite happy just sitting at the table, playing hand after hand after hand. And a number of years ago, that could have been successful. Right now, with the way the game has developed, you have to really be blocking in those hours every week to make sure that you're going to have a chance to play against opponents who are actually putting in that same level of effort.
The newer generation thinks, and to a certain extent they're right, that poker was easier in the past. It's a little bit of yes and no. I mean, the truth is in the past, there wasn't really anything good to study, especially once you became good. A lot of the journey was like on your own, self-discovery, thinking about it. You know, you couldn't get GTO answers from solutions like solvers and to a certain extent like friends that you knew and whatever. It was different in a lot of ways, especially the studying process.
There's a huge difference between what you can do whilst you're studying and then what you can then implement at the table for many players. What you need to do is you need to close that gap so that what you could understand if you were breaking down a hand history, you can then implement those same skills at the table when you're playing for money. So really focusing in on making sure you can play your A game as frequently as possible will have a big impact on the money that you make.
Not exactly sure how to put this, but we're all a little weird. If you went to a psychiatrist, they'd prescribe you something. We kind of run the gamut of anxiety, depression, to OCD, ADHD, autism. For me personally, it's anxiety, mostly social anxiety. And I have been prescribed medications at points in my life for it. You know, everybody has something that's not entirely typical about the way their brain works, in my experience. For whatever reason, that creates a mind that excels.
A lot of poker players have eccentricities. It is a game where you're going to have to spend a lot of hours on your own in front of your computer, doing a lot of study and putting in hours and hours and hours of poker. You're going to have to be comfortable with that level of isolation to some extent through certain periods of your day. So that's something to just be aware of. You need to be comfortable in your own company to reach the top in poker, especially if we're in the online environment.
Every great poker player is competitive, without exception. It's interesting when you look back at a lot of great players, both of my generation and generations prior, how many of them were really competitive athletes, which you don't usually associate with a game like poker, especially with my generation where we're all nerds. I was very into football my whole childhood and played in high school. That was as far as I went because I'm 5'6". You look at guys like Jason Kuhn, who's a collegiate athlete, Alex Foxen, Doyle Brunson was a professional athlete, Patrick Antonius, Gus Hansen, David Benjamin. You've got a lot of people who excelled in athletics. In addition to that, you've got a lot of players who excelled at games like Magic the Gathering or chess. Basically, something about being hyper-competitive has pushed people to be great at poker, which makes sense. If you're competitive with other people, it's a very competitive game. If you're competitive with yourself, you're going to improve yourself, patting away from the table. So yeah, competitiveness, I think, is absolutely key.
If you want to reach the top, you're going to have some killer instinct. You're going to have a competitive nature. Otherwise, those who do have that killer instinct and competitive nature are just going to move forward far faster than you.
I mean, I think it speaks to my competitiveness that I have never been content or satisfied with where I'm at in poker. I always want to push and challenge myself to play against better players. For me personally, it's not a competitiveness of wanting to crush others. It's wanting to see how far I can go and competitiveness with myself. You can get to the highest stakes without a lot of mental toughness, but you can't stay there. You can't have a long career and be a long-term top player unless you're mentally tough, because the variance involved in poker, you are going to be tested. You are going to lose countless buy-ins. You're going to lose a ton of money. You're going to lose for an extended period of time, weeks, months. You could lose for years. During that time, it's not just the money that you've lost that hurts. It's the fear that you'll never win again.
It doesn't matter how well you play, you're going to go through periods where you're losing buy-ins. And without that grit to push through, to continue to study, to continue to play your A game, to continue to prepare yourself for the sessions, you're not going to see the success. And I think that's what makes poker very different to a lot of other games. You can play your best, you can play better than your opponents, and you can still lose frequently. And that's where the grit and determination are so important.
my hourly rate is this. Every year I'm going to make this much money, and I'm going to try to move up to this level and this level. And all of a sudden, for 2 months, I lose. I didn't just lose $300,000. I lost the $6 million I was going to make over the next few years in my head. The game will really, really test you and push you, and it's broken a lot of people. You need to be able to navigate it somehow. Everybody has different methods. I personally take breaks. I work with mental game coaches. I've done a lot in my career to push through those times and bring my A game as much as I can. But you have to be able to handle it, otherwise you're not gonna last.
I think the top 3 things that are necessary to have a successful career in poker is environment, risk management, as well as aptitude. If you have good people around you, people that consistently push you, people that don't let you get complacent, people that try to have you reach your potential, as well as keep you on the rails of not trying to spend too much money, go too crazy when good things happen, as well as not be too risk averse when bad things happen, as well as having a natural talent for patterns, seeing how the game works, where in a lot of spots, certain heuristics kind of come up every now and again. So the ability to actually recognize these and implement in game while having a good environment and support system around you and having a good head on your shoulders is going to make it more likely than not that you're going to have a successful poker career.
Something that I've noticed with a lot of highly successful poker players is they're surrounding themselves with other highly successful poker players. Network is extraordinarily important for you to be able to develop your game and for you to have the support in the bad periods. If you're going through the variance on your own, it can be incredibly tough, but having a support network around you of other players who understand variance, it's going to help you through those rough periods. One of the things that I noticed in players who've reached the top is a level of professionalism. And this isn't just in the poker itself, but it's in the way they schedule their life in general. Now, nearly all of the players I work with at the highest stakes, they're working on their physical fitness. They have a personal trainer. They're meditating. They're working on their mental game. They're looking at their sleep. They're optimizing their family life to try and gain every edge they can. I believe that level of professionalism is something you need to be aware of if you're looking to reach the highest stakes.
I've invested in myself both in terms of coaches, courses. I've invested in myself in terms of mental game coaches. I've worked a lot with Elliot Rowe on that. But you really need to have that foundation of these qualities in order to build on top of to become great.